Good evening. We'd like to welcome you to our council meeting this evening. And I would ask you, if you have cell phones, to please turn them off or silence them at this time. We will stand and have pledge of allegiance by Councilmember Wagonhouse and prayer by Councilmember Reed, invocation by Councilmember Reed, and pledge of allegiance by Councilmember Wagonhouse.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would like to pray with us, would you please remain standing? Dear God of us all, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the grace and the mercy that you have bestowed upon us. We thank you for the unmerited favor. We ask you to look upon the city of Madison, all of its citizens, mayor and council and city manager. Give us wisdom, knowledge, understanding, insight, depth, and recall to make decisions based on the citizens in the city of Madison. Allow us to understand, God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Before we go further in our meeting, we'd like to read a proclamation. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government and other levels. And whereas professional municipal clerk have pledged to be even mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal services to all. And whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center of functions of local government and community. And whereas professional municipal clerk continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education, programs, seminars, workshops, and annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and the international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the professional municipal clerk. Now therefore, I, Fred Perriman, Mayor of the City of Madison, Georgia, do recognize the week of May 5th through 11th, 2024 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerk, Deborah Gilbert, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to communities they represent. And witness of, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Madison to be affixed this 13th day of May, 2024. Mayor Fred Perriman. We would ask our municipal clerk to please come forward. If our county would like, councilman would like to come down to take a picture with our municipal clerk.
Scooch.
We congratulate you for the job you're doing for our city. Congratulations from our city council and our city manager and our staff for the fine job that you're doing for our city.
Thank you.
Eyes forward and smiles. Thank you. Thank you. Got it.
Consent agenda, approve of minutes for a regular meeting of April 8th, 2024. If you've had a chance to read those minutes, if I could ask to get a motion on the second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed is none, vote unanimously. Zoning hearing. New business, Monica?
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Apologize, Molly had a last-minute 4:30 kiddo call that is sick and at home, so I'm with you this evening, and for any deficiencies, please forgive me, but we'll try to do our best to cover. So we have 3 variances that we'll talk about, and then we have a text amendment that we'll cover. Our 3 variances this evening, I'm just going to remind the mayor and council, as we have our pro and con, that any member of the audience that speaks should sign in and place their name and address on the sign-in sheet in front of them. And I'm going to get started, Mr. Mayor, if you're ready for me.
We're ready.
Super. So the first variance we have before you, the applicant is requesting a 2-lot width variance from section 700.1 at 1091 Bramblewood Drive. This is Mr. Zachary Williams. As of the date of the report, there was no additional public comment. The applicant is requesting, first, an 11.2 lot width variance on tract 2, and a 10.1 lot width variance on proposed tract 3. And this is in order to construct 2 duplexes on each. That creates 2 non-conforming lots and the construction of 2 duplexes. The property has been zoned small lot residential since 2005. There's a little bit of history of zoning action on this property. I hope you read that in your packet. In 2012, conditional use permits were obtained to construct two family dwellings on the property, but that was it being a single lot of record. And then in 2023, we had a conditional use permit obtained by the applicant to construct a 4-unit, basically an apartment house. That's a 4 behind the door, something like that. On the 2 parcels, provided that the condition was that the aforementioned lots of records be combined before construction. And subsequently, they were combined by the applicant. So you had 2 lots of record, they were combined into a single lot of record. Unfortunately, what we have here is a variance to split it back into 2 lots, neither of which meet the lot width requirement. It does not appear that the required findings for a variance approval detailed in section 1130.6 have been met by this application. The Planning Commission did review the application. They issued an approval for the variance based on what they heard. That was a 3-1 vote with Commissioner Deletto dissenting, but no findings were made and offered in support of the standards having been met. So in summary, before you do public hearing, I just offer that if you motion to approve, that's written before you. If you motion to deny, staff advises that any motion to deny include the dimensional requirement variances from section 700.1, specifically that it does not meet the required findings for variance approval set forth in 1130.6. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have following the public hearing.
Thanks, Monica. Our public hearing is now open. We will have 15 minutes for both sides. Is there anyone here to speak for this amendment? If you would, state your name and your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Zachary Williams, owner of Z Williams Development Company. The reason behind just wanting to breaking it back out to 2 lots, with interest rates being where they are, it's not feasible to do a 4-unit apartment house. So I want to build an affordable product here in Madison. So the duplex is the best route to go. And in order to do that, I have to break it back out. I already built 1 duplex on the left side of that parcel. So I just, and I have affordable tenants in that, in both dwellings. So I just want to move forward with doing duplexes. Right now with the interest rate being so high, it's not feasible to to do a four-unit house, so, yeah.
So, do you have a waiting list? Is that people just waiting to move into those homes, that duplex homes?
Well, right now, I'm receiving a lot of calls and asking when I'm gonna start building, so, I mean, I'm not keeping a list right now, but, I mean, a lot of calls are coming in right now, so.
Will.
Yeah,
Sure will.
yeah,
Thank you, sir.
that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Is there anybody else here to speak for? Anybody here to speak against? If not, this public hearing is closed, and it's back to our council member for debate or deliverance. Any questions?
I'll just say a couple of comments I want to make that are, that we find on the staff report. It is a concern since this application doesn't meet the requirements for variance. It says that the variance would cause, according to staff, the variance would cause substantial detriment to public good and severely impair the purpose or intent of zoning ordinance by allowing a reduction of the minimum lot width without justification. It says that it does appear that this variance may confer upon property of the applicant a special privilege denied to other properties in the zoning district. So what we're looking at here, and I get it, and it's an honorable thing to talk about, creating workforce housing and to, do the public good, but on the other hand, this is why we have the zoning laws and the regulations, and that's why the variances are so coveted and strict when it comes to allowing them. I think of a couple of applications in the past where we have had folks come in, I'm not gonna name anybody, but and ask for variances, ask for special exceptions that they didn't get, and it makes me feel bad that they didn't get to have, use the property the way it would have been, 20 years ago or 10 years ago, but that's how our zoning laws are. So I just think we need to pay attention to staff recommendation and to staff consideration in this case.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
Can I ask Monica a question?
Yes, ma'am.
We did infill housing in my district, and we did a couple of changes. I don't want to call names either, but we did a couple of changes to variances and conditional uses about the size of some lots. Was it similar to what we're doing right now?
So we did an administrative variance, and that was to provide relief in areas where lots were traditionally already small, and the application of the 2005 rewrite would provide undue hardship. That was done so that where you had an administrative variance of less than a certain percentage. My understanding from Molly is both of these exceed that minimum administrative variance, and that's why it's in front of you this evening. The two portions of lot subdivision and requirements that we typically do not offer variances to, that they're very hard, and we know they're hard. I certainly and sympathetic to Zach, Mr. Williams. We know the need for affordable housing. However, the two things that are supposed to be inviolate are supposed to be lot width and lot area. And so therefore, staff, while sympathetic, couldn't find a section of the ordinance where we could say it met the findings. So we had to comport with the law, even though we're very sympathetic.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, are you finished, Gary?
I am, thank you.
I commend Mr. Williams for what he's doing here in Madison, and I think it's wonderful when we have a local, small-scale developer like Mr. Williams, and I would really like to be able to help in this situation. But if I can echo what Councilwoman Wagenhauser is saying, there's 5 standards here that would allow us to do a variance, and unfortunately, this application seems to fail on all 5 of them. It's not really kind of questionable. I would say, though, that if you had mentioned in your letter you're interested in providing housing, workforce housing, affordable housing, and we certainly, as a city, we commend you for that. Is it not possible that you can go back to the previous plan, which is do 4 apartments and still serve the needs for 4 families rather than the 2 separated duplexes? Is that not allowable?
Yes, sir,
Yeah.
that's how he's currently zoned.
So I, as much as I sympathize with what you're trying to do, I think you can probably go back to the 4 apartments that you originally planned on. There's just too much, not a single one of the standards has been met for allowing a variance in my mind.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
may I have a question for Monica?
Sure.
What,
sir.
The road frontage was 50 feet? I've tried to find it,
The requirement is 75 feet.
75 feet? And what is it going to be?
The request,
I couldn't find
one
it.
is 63.8 and the other one's 64.9. They're both give or take about a 10
got
or
it.
11-foot variance.
I remember seeing that now. Thank you
Yes,
very
sir.
much. Mr. Mayor, we're coming to some times when we're going to have to try to think through the future. And the future is very important. And when you, being in real estate and understanding a lot of this stuff, it's absolutely not economical to build the 4 units. And that's what every investor, every builder is facing right now. The interest rate, if it were back down around 3 or 4, he could probably jump all over this. We need to create this housing, and we're probably going to have to think about a little less road frontage. I'm sorry. If we can't live in the past, we got to start thinking about the future a little bit. And we need affordable rent housing in this city. We have people waiting. There are 270 something at Canaan Crossing. They got these other ones coming up. They got all these people. And I know many families right now are struggling that if he starts building, he'll have 250 people on the list. And we need to start thinking about those folks. The difference between 75 and 63. Okay, Mona, go ahead.
No, sir, I was just going to give you a couple comments.
Oh, thank you.
One is if you are interested in trying to allow for more lot subdivision, the appropriate venue for that is for us to re-examine lot width. We could re-examine lot width in comparison to specific areas. We could look at increasing the administrative review variance. Maybe instead of 10%, it needs to be 15% in areas where the lot size are small. But it needs to be an amendment to the law as opposed to a one-off, because if the intent is to try to drive affordable housing or accommodate affordable housing, and y'all know that no one is more supportive of that than the housing team and myself. If you want to do that, we have to make sure that developers are not just asking for, and this does not apply to Zach, I'm talking in general now, that we don't allow for a smaller lot size to be exploited by people to put 2 $700,000 homes on a
got you.
65-foot wide lot. So we do need to find a mechanism in the ordinance to tie that to the affordability promise. And then it needs to be a kind of a policy rewrite as opposed to varying for the law and giving one specific privilege to one specific owner. I think we would be happy to look at the administrative section first and then have conversations with the attorney about other avenues if that's your intent of a way to tie it to the promise. But once you award something on a promise and they leave the room, they're not required to fulfill that promise. And I just need to be clear. I do think Zach will do what he says he's going to do. We know him, but that's not the standard that gets set when we offer a variance.
Monica, while you're there, Was there much discussion from the planning and zoning when it was brought before them, because it was approved by
I
them?
wasn't there. There may be a planning commissioner in the room that could nod instead of speak to it and get us in trouble, but they could nod and tell us there either was a lot of discourse or not. It was a 3-1 vote, but the one was an abstention. Is there a planning commissioner in the room? Yes, there is. Was there a lot of discussion or not discussion?
There was discussion. It was very similar to what's already occurred right here.
Okay. But there were no findings accompanying the motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Monica. You go step back down.
No,
I was
I'm
just-
sorry.
I was just gonna thank you for what you just said, because that's the way it should be done. And remember, I said, we need to start planning, okay?
Right.
And I would like to see us start making that plan ASAP. And, because I think it's needed. We've got to evaluate that.
Well, we would only do that with the direction for from the council, or actually from the manager, but y'all decide what you want us to do, and actually just consider the merits of this application now. I just wanted you to know that there is a policy opportunity that you would have to explore if you wanted to look at that a different way.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I? Before Monica sits down, thank you.
I'm sorry.
So if it's the will of the council to look at it as a policy and addressing it in the manner that you just discussed, rather than give a variance when it appears that none of the criteria have been met, how would that look? If Mr. Williams were, and if the council were to go that way, would he withdraw that? Would he be punished if we denied this? Would he have to wait, or would it not apply because it's going to come back as a policy?
Can I turn that to the
Sure.
city attorney, please?
If you vote to deny it, by state law, he is excluded from reapplying within 6 months. I think Madison has raised that to 12, which cities are allowed to do.
It's always been 12, I think.
Yeah. But state law minimum, cities can go above that. So it's 12 months here. If he were to ask you all to withdraw his application, and you all accepted that, then he would not be penalized. Is that
He
true?
could also ask for tabling to a date certain and see if the city proceeds with the text amendment.
That as well.
Thank you.
And if turned down on the variance, he still has the option, although it sounds maybe like not an economic option, to build what he's currently zoned for.
Yeah.
And if I may,
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, so to clarify, what I'm hearing you say is that Mr. Williams, at this point in time, before we make a motion, he can withdraw his application and hang tight to see if we make any changes, or he can ask for it, he himself can ask for it to be tabled to date certain and see if the council is moving on a direction, or he lets it ride, we vote either to approve or deny, and it's done, and if it is a denial, then he can't come back for a year.
He can't come back for a year on a variance of a
Okay.
similar character. He can submit his own text amendment if he doesn't agree with one that you might proffer, or the fact that you don't move. He could put forth his own text amendment, and that is not the same request.
Got you. Thank you for that. Good.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Monica. So we could ask Mr. Williams, would you like to withdraw your application, or would you like for the council to move forward?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for the attorney. We don't have a motion on the floor
No,
at
we
this time.
don't.
No.
Because we discussed that at our work session. If we could, but we could recommend tabling it for a certain period of time, could we not?
Whatever Mr. Williams decides, you will have to take action. Whether it's asking for a withdrawal, you'll have to accept his withdrawal. If he asks for a table, he can't table it, y'all have to table it. So you could unilaterally table it without Mr. Williams doing anything. Does that make sense?
But if that's not what he wants.
So, Mr. Williams, what is it that you would like?
I would like to just move forward with it. I don't want to withdraw right now, so.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So it's back to the council for debate or motion.
So he said he wants to move forward.
Yeah, but he can't.
Huh?
Yeah, he wants to move forward.
Well, he can if we,
I move that we, if I may, I move that we deny the dimensional requirement variances from section 700.1 at 036B009 based on the application, public hearing and discussion and considering applicable standards due to the following reasoning, the findings and conclusions, which are presented in the staff report.
Second.
There ain't no more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposes, none, vote unanimously. Thank you so much. Monica Public Hearing Variance, Zachary Sittler and Ali Homer. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mastro. Okay, so you have before you a variance, and I left my packet. Sorry, Molly has them in a different order. Just a moment, please. Okay, so we have a application for a variance to create two minimum lot area variances from section 700.1 is the variance from at 689 South Main Street. That is parcel M20013. Written public comment was filed as of 12 p.m. on April 18th when your report was placed to you. The applicant is requesting very specifically two things. First, he requests a .314 acre lot area variance on the proposed tract fronting South Main and a 3.14 acre lot area variance on the proposed tract facing Old Post Road. And states the purpose is to build a barn available for rent. This would create two non-conforming lots and the construction of a principal structure fronting Old Post Road. The property has been zoned large lot residential, which is R1 since 2005. That's when we did the heavy rezone. It does not appear that any of the findings required for variance approval detailed in section 1130.6 have been met. In addition, the variance attempt subverts section 430 and 800.8 of the zoning ordinance. 430 says that only one principal structure is customary accessory outbuildings may be erected on a lot. Section 800.8 states that either the single family or the accessory dwelling unit must be occupied by the owner of the property who resides there at least 6 months out of the year and claims the location as their residence and does not rent it out the owner-occupied dwelling. This requirement was established to protect ownership opportunities and while providing some residential rental opportunities within the city's low-density residential districts. The Planning Commission did hear this application. They did recommend to deny. Their recommendation included the fact that it did not meet the required findings for variance approval set forth in section 11.30. That was a unanimous vote 4-0 by those present. Staff advises that if you approve, please state the findings for doing so. If you deny, please make sure to include that it does not include the required findings for variance approval. Happy to answer any questions after the public hearing.
Thank you. Our public hearing is now open. There ain't no one here to speak for this variance? Anyone here to speak against the variance?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
I am so opposed to splitting lots in the historic district. It destroys the character of the district, which is a big draw to the community in the tourist dollars. And I just don't think it's necessary. When people buy in the district, they know what they're buying into, and they need to be held to that standard. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else here to speak against? If not, this public hearing is closed and it's back to our council member for debate or discussion.
Yeah, Mayor, I've got, again, it's very similar to the last one in my mind. You've got five criteria, 5 standards. It appears that none of them have been met. In addition, I think in Mr. Sidler's own letter, he mentions that he's currently renting the primary residence, and we have as Monica just enumerated, we have again a requirement that one of the units would be occupied, and that's not the case in here. So I just don't see it coming close to meeting the standards we need to grant a variance.
That a more discussion?
If I may, I would just agree with what Councilmember Joyce said. Again, this so reflects or mirrors what we were discussing. And certainly appreciate the fact that the zoning is, for large residential. And that one of it, we should be concerned about protecting our historic district as well.
Are there any more discussion? If not, we're ready for a motion and a second to approve or deny.
Yeah, I would move to deny the variance request for M20-013 based on the public hearing and the findings that the application does not meet all the required criteria for variance approval as set forth in section 1130.6.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposers, none, vote unanimously. Thank you. Monica bears on Michael Boyer and Emily Boyer for 10 East Central Avenue.
Yes, sir, thank you. Our third variance request this evening, the applicant is requesting a minimum rear yard setback variance from section 700.1 for 410 East Central Avenue. The written public comment was filed as of 12 p.m. on the day of the report. This property has been zoned medium lot residential R2 since 2005. And Molly noted that it does not appear to meet the required findings for variance approval detailed in section 1130.6. The Planning Commission did discuss this, but they did recommend approval of this variance. Specifically because they made the conclusions that there had been the issuance of a COA by the Historic Preservation Commission and that a building permit had been issued by the City of Madison on December the 19th. And they did vote in favor of that. Molly did say that she would check into the timeline, so I'm just going to review that for you because this one's a little bit of a sticky wicket. I will let you know that when a permit is issued in error, we do have the ability to back our ears and say, it has to be in accordance with the law anyway. We did cover that with the attorney. However, it has been the City of Madison's unwritten policy that if we issue something in error, that we do make good on that. And so Molly did state correctly for the record that she would check into it, and the Planning Commission gave that deference in their vote. I have before me the timeline. We did research that, and I'm just going to relay the information that we found. This application did go forward, first as kind of a deck approval and then for an addition build-out. That certificate of appropriateness was issued in June. We did search for the survey. The survey was recorded in November of '22. The warranty deed was transferred to the current owner in September of '23. And then the building permit was issued in December of '23. I want to talk a little bit about that and what that means, because I did find that the building permit was not issued in error. We gave that deference at the Planning Commission meeting, but I want to state emphatically that it was not. That does not mean that should influence your decision. That's just me telling you a finding of fact that I made after opening the file. When we issue building permits, we do not require a site plan. And the reason we don't do that is because when someone is doing a deck, an arbor, an outbuilding, it would require an extra fee of anywhere from $500 to $600 for them to have the property surveyed. If they have a building survey and they'd like to give it to us or have us do a conceptual review on it, we do that. But it was not proffered with the building permit. What that means is we assume, and the applicant is proffering, that they can meet the current zoning setbacks. And that's how we've operated for 20, 30 plus years. I know that Jay and Molly went over this, and I did as well on the phone for a little bit. So we want to make sure that we're clear. We followed standard operating procedure, issued a building permit with the assumption and with the applicant's proffering of the building application without a site plan that it could meet zoning in terms of that rear setback. In March of '24, the zoning application before you this evening was received, and it did include a survey. So the survey was available at that time and provided as part of that application. And then at the Planning Commission meeting, they did go ahead and approve it because we had to check into the building file. So I just wanted to make sure that I am clear and on the record about what we found in terms of extant building files, and I have the building files with me this evening. Let's see. If you approve the application, your wording is there, and you can base that on the discussion, applicable standards, and the clarifications and statements that have been made. If you deny the application, we would recommend that you include that it does not meet the required standards for variance approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions after the conclusion of the public hearing.
Our public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here to speak for?
Shane Boyer. As I mentioned to Planning and Zoning earlier, I was confused why I had to be here at that meeting, but I'm no longer confused, but because clearly more information has been found, and that nobody is in error, and that I'm in error in my application. So now I'm pretty clear. To be honest with you, there's a lot of information in this staff report that's in addition to what was in the original staff report. And I am a little bit confused by some of it, but it's either here nor there. I do take issue with the findings that we didn't meet any of the criteria for a variance. We went through the process, we were told, to get an addition done on our home there at 14 East Central. That process is going from the HPC, getting that approval with COA, and then issuing for a building permit. And so that was the only thing we were ever told to do. Nobody asked for a copy of the survey. The survey was filed and recorded prior to the application being submitted. And so for the application for the building permit. So as to the finding as that we did not meet, it does not appear there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the property because of size, shape, or topography. That's correct as to a lot that was overlaid on a 1906 cottage. So to take an R2 zoning and overlay it with some setbacks on a 1906 cottage in 2005, it's a pretty big assumption that could be no issues. The actual extent of the rear setback, which was defined by, nobody determines what the front of the house is, and per the zoning regs, there's only decision on what is the rear, and that is the opposite of the primary entrance. So we've been told that the rear is the side in which the addition was proposed. And so therefore, the current extent of the existing dwelling after we'd already gone through $50,000 of demo internally and externally, the actual rear extent of the house is 30 feet from the rear rear property line as exists. So in that case, there could be no addition or any improvements ever made to that house moving forward because of the R2 zoning that was overlaid on top of this lot. So we can either pick up the house and move it forward, which I doubt the HPC would want us to do, or we just can't do anything to bring the house up to modern standard of living. There's no laundry room in that house. There's one existing bathroom. The other bathroom's stuck in a closet and just not up to code for somebody who want to live in modern day times. So I think there is some abnormal situations as to the situation of the current dwelling on the house. If you go back to the Sanborn fire maps from the early 1900s, there was a carriage house within 5 feet of the property line. So there is historical preference to the fact that there were other buildings on the property. It says there's the little application of this ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship. Well, we went through the process which you're told to go through, got the building permit issues, and now we're $50,000 deep into a remodel that we can no longer do. If we were denied here, then we would have to go and change completely, go back through HPC, something new, and then apply for a new building permit. The actual solution was that we could go back and repair the existing above-ground wooden deck and carport, so on a property. So the solution, the option by the city is that we can go and repair a carport and a deck, but we can't build the addition that's been approved by HPC. It says that it does appear the variance would cause substantial detriment to public good and severely impair the purposes or intent of the zoning ordinance by allowing a reduction in the minimum rear setback. I think HPC serves precedence over any kind of zoning that the city would like to apply. Any kind of historic, there's a precedent there. The historic buildings take preference over zoning classification, and that's my opinion. And it's also a corner lot. On a corner lot, you have 2 front setbacks, so you're required to meet not only a front, as soon as you determine what the front is, you have to determine that it's primary entrance or front. So you have 2 30-foot setbacks, and then, so therefore, you've got to decide which one's the rear and which one's the side. That's not up for me to determine. It's somebody else's opinion or interpretation of what the primary entrance is. I can tell you which every pedestrian comes to that house is off Pine Street, but we've been told that where the mailbox is and the front door is the primary entrance, which would make the side in question the rear setback. A variance will not confer upon the property of the applicant any special privilege denied to other properties in the district. That's incorrect. In 2009, a building permit was issued in the historic district on Foster and Pine Street to Weldon Crook to build a new residence, which included a garage that has an 11.6-foot setback rear and 13-foot setback on the side. I have copies of that plat that's recorded if needed. It does appear the special circumstances surrounded by the request are the result of the acts by the applicant. Absolutely. We applied to the HPC, was approved a permit. We tore a bunch of stuff down, tore out the inside of our house, and it was absolutely done by myself and my wife and our contractor who pulled the permit. He does a lot of homes in this area. So I actually just request that you follow what planning and zoning already does and approve our request for variance. All we're doing is asking for a rear setback equal to what a side is on a corner lot. I don't think that's egregious. Our neighbor is the Madison Baptist Church. There's a pecan orchard there. Nobody's going to be harmed. Their parking actually comes over on our property. I don't have an issue with it. I'm chairman of the deacons at Madison Baptist Church, so I don't think we have an issue with the neighbors. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak for this variance? Not as anyone here to speak against this variance? If not, it's back to the council for discussion.
I've got a question I could for Monica. So the timeline, so the idea that this was based on an erroneous report, that is totally incorrect, is that right?
The survey was available in November 22 at the tax records. It was I won't swear, I haven't seen the warranty deed. Molly probably has it in the file. It would have been attached to the warranty deed at the time of purchase, and it was definitely submitted with the zoning application. It's not very popular to say the applicant should have known what their setbacks were.
And was I gather the non-conforming but grandfathered porch and the deck, he could have rebuilt those, but was it based on faulty understanding of some of the regulations that led him to completely remove that part of the house? Even though he could have rebuilt it in that same footprint?
The feedback that he could rebuild the deck was that we would consider it a repair. After consultation with the city attorney, a repair would not constitute us issuing a non-conforming building permit. So we provided the applicant with the information we were given by the attorney.
To clarify, what is, so I realize that the back setback is 30 feet.
Yes, ma'am.
And the side setbacks are what?
The side setback is, just a second.
Sorry, was it in the report and I missed it?
I believe it's 15. I believe it's 15.
Okay.
So this is a reduction, as the applicant said, to a similar setback to the side. And just for clarity, because I think there was a little bit of confusion there, every lot, HPC does not have precedent over zoning. Zoning is there are different ordinances.
Yeah.
So the frontage setbacks are determined by zoning where the building currently sits, because it is a non-conforming structure if we've moved the setback around since then. The determination of where the front door is and the postal address and the post office determines where the front is and the rear. If we were being sticky about it, we could apply rear setbacks to both, but we don't. It has been policy that we go with where the front setback is and the other one becomes the side. So we don't apply a double rear setback to parcels, just to be clear. But that's determined by zoning, not preservation, which reviews design, not setbacks.
And I would add, after many years at HPC meetings, they're very careful about saying this, we have different standards with HPC, they're more to do with the building, and they make a kind of a fairly clear point that we don't get involved with setbacks, city regulations regarding ancillary ideas like setbacks. I will say, I do find the standard number one about the unusual circumstances to be a little bit, I do see Mr. Fowler? Yeah, I do see his point on that.
Boyer.
Thank you. I do see Mr. Foyer's point on that more than I did in the other applications. The fact that it is surrounded by vacant church property, it doesn't mean it's always going to be that way, but it does kind of make me look at it a little bit differently than maybe I would consider that to be somewhat exceptional and extraordinary conditions.
Well, what I would suggest is that you articulate any findings you have, either pro or con, as part of your motion. Make sure to include that.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask Monica a question? So Mr. Boyer wanted to build an extension to live in, right? That's, you said he could repair the deck?
The very first conversation that planning staff had in terms of interaction on zoning was about replacement of a deck. And then my understanding is then the applicant decided to do an addition and proceeded to HPC as appropriate to see if they would even consider an addition.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
So the certificate of appropriateness was for a deck and not for,
No, the certificate of appropriateness was for an addition, but they're not checking setbacks. They're never going to check setbacks. That's not their job. They approved the design of an addition to a historic house. Whether HPC is considering whether or not it is detrimental to the resource. It has nothing to do with lot size. It has nothing to do with setbacks. And Mr. Boyer did correctly state for the record that a building permit had been issued for a building that was 11 feet from the property line. You can still apply for outbuildings 5 feet from the property line. That 30-foot setback only applies to the primary structure. So I want to be clear that if it was an outbuilding we were looking at, it could get within 5 feet of the rear property line. But primary structures that are required to be 30 feet. Anything else from me? Because I
Yeah,
figure
just
y'all
one
want to
thing.
chew on this a little bit.
If the interpretation was that the rear yard, so currently we're looking at the front yard being at the central side of the street. The rear yard, or the side setback would apply to the Pine Street part. If it was reversed and, as Mr. Foyer says, it looks like it's the main entrance seems to come in off of Pine, most people think that. Would what he's asking for have been allowed if that interpretation was switched?
If it had a different street address and the architecture was designed to face the other street, yes, sir. But that's not what determines what frontage is.
We shouldn't allow any corner houses. They always present too many problems.
They are unique, and they do offer us challenges. The only place where we really kind of vary from the setback requirement, or not vary from the setback requirements, but don't interpret it in the most stringent way possible, is that on a double frontage corner lot, we don't require rear setbacks on both of those. And so it has been policy to always use the primary orientation and the postal address and the assigned address of the property.
Mr. Mayor, I got a question.
Sure.
Monica.
Yes, sir.
When you assign a mailbox location, how's that done?
We don't do that. As a rule, in the historic district, those are already assigned. So they would have been assigned at the time of purchase. They would have been extant at the time of purchase.
And then my other question is, what is the access off what street? Pine or?
Doesn't matter where the access is.
No,
but
where
I
is it
don't-
now?
I actually don't know.
Can we ask Mr.
You can
Boyd?
ask the applicant. I bet you Mr. Boyer knows.
Yeah, it's in your notes, but it's on Pine Street.
I didn't hear that.
Pine Street.
Pine Street.
We have, corner properties have that luxury, and they often shift their driveways to the side street because it makes it a lot easier to get out.
And the fire department likes to have that where the access is from as the address.
Yes, sir.
Correct. So
I'm sure they do.
He could go ahead and change the address, like Eric said, and everything, that would change the front. Like
Staff would
Eric said-
recommend you find other extraordinary circumstances, or that's going to cause a huge problem for us with street addressing. Please find another extraordinary circumstance that you see. If you are so inclined to see that this is a unique circumstance, then please do so without changing standardized policy for 1,600 properties in the city.
That won't take you long, Monica. Oh, God.
I'm not trying to particularly sway you one way or the other.
I know you're not.
I'm always trying to give you a route to do what you want to do. I lean on the attorney to speak to if it's extraordinary circumstances. We've been trying to avoid requiring surveys at the time of building permits. We'd like to continue to do that. We find it to be onerous. But if we need to shift to that to keep this kind of error from misconception being made by a property owner in the future, we check it at the time that the building inspector goes to the site. But if we need to start requiring surveys, we can do that. We're just a little nervous about the expense of that.
Mr. Mayor, I got one final comment.
You're done with me then, right?
You want me to change my mind?
No.
She said she had news.
No, I was going to say, Monica, we have that problem on those corner lots. And they are a serious problem. I'm trying to figure out in my mind with the location of where it is and the church and all that, if it's a hassle to change the address, that the option of going ahead and building whatever structure they want on there, because it's only going to enhance the neighborhood. I mean, it's not going to, what's there now is bringing everybody's property down. So if we allow, and since the planning and zoning kind of recommended it, I would be inclined to go along with the planning and zoning. That's probably the most logical, smartest way to go, and I'm just throwing that out to the rest of the council people for consideration.
Councilman.
May I provide another alternative?
Yes.
That doesn't give us heartburn? Instead of requiring a survey, one of the things we did discuss with the attorney as a possibility, we have something that's called a homeowner's affidavit. And that is when a homeowner is taking it upon themselves to build, construct, they're not hiring a contractor, there's no professional on site doing other things and checking things, and they provide a homeowner's affidavit saying they can meet the state building code. So what I might proffer is that if you find there's extraordinary circumstances, I would encourage you to look at it at the time of building plan submittal, that it could have been caught had a survey been submitted and the owner has suffered, well, maybe not suffered is the right word, but expended funds based on the assurance of that building permit. Am I doing okay, Jay?
Great.
All right, okay, I keep looking at you. What we could do to avoid that problematically for the planning department going forward and from making other citizens enjoy the expense of a survey is we could make it policy going forward that we would require a homeowner's affidavit at the time they submit their building plans that they are not doing a survey, but they have checked and confirmed that they can meet all zoning setback requirements. That would avoid the cost being passed on to the homeowner. It would give us the assurance that they would consider themselves at fault if this occurred again, and would allow you to proceed without, you want to finish that sentence for me? No, you don't know where I'm going. It would allow you to consider extraordinary circumstances without vastly changing city policy and procedure.
Mr. Mayor, I want to just say, kind of say just one final thing, and I'll quit talking. We all know that the surveys are not accurate. The information that's on QPublic is not accurate. And a lot of our buyers are buying it, and they look at there and they say, oh, it's 8 acres or what, you know, whatever. And we've had that problem. It's always been a problem. And it's going to be a problem until we start getting modern surveys done. And when you buy a house and they go in, everybody goes, they pull out the QPublic, they look it up, they look and see how many square feet in the house and how many acres it has, and they go through all that and they look at that and they're taking it as gospel, and it's not gospel. And so we may just have to require a survey. I mean, that would be my recommendation if I had a client that I'm showing a property to that wants to do something to, is to get a survey. So I think that's the simplest thing to do.
May I ask a clarifying question from Monica? So what I heard you say was that going forward, staff could, planning department could initiate or employ a homeowner's affidavit. Is that you're saying? So so basically it's a document that when someone comes to you and they're doing their own work, they specifically say, yes, we know what the setbacks are, we know blah, blah, blah. And so it basically forces them to be informed.
Right, so what I was specifically saying, and I'll just expand just a little bit, what I am saying is that if you find this to be an extraordinary circumstance, the way we close the hole after the fact, so owners cannot say it is our responsibility to know what the setbacks are for them, or to check their setbacks except at the time of when a foundation is poured. That's when we check them. Is that we could, at the time that they make application for a building permit, we could say, do you understand that Q Public is not an accurate representation of your property? Do you want to supply us with a building survey? If they do, we'll review it. We provide that review now. And then finally, if they decide to take the risk, my suggestion to keep it cheap for some people is to say, in lieu of providing a formal building survey, a formal lot survey, I am willing to sign a homeowner's affidavit attesting that I know and have checked my own setbacks and I can meet the law. What we don't want is owners coming in and saying, hey, I didn't know, when they had the
Right.
opportunity to know.
Perfect. So what I'm hearing you say then, if we recognize or we want to,
If you were to
if we want
recognize
to recognize this being
extenuating
an
circumstances
extraordinary
tonight,
situation,
I'll be in my boss's office tomorrow morning asking to close that hole.
brilliant. Okay, beautiful, and thank you for that. Thanks for looking after us.
We do try to problem solve.
Yes, you do. Thank you. Okay.
Any more comments from council? If not, it's back to the council for a vote.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make
We
a,
need a motion.
All right, for motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we approve the dimensional requirement variances from section 700.1 at M19-020 based on the application, public hearing, and discussion, and considering applicable standards with the following extraordinary and unique circumstances involving the surrounding property, the history of the property with regard to building permit and HPC approval.
Second?
Period.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposers? None vote unanimously. Thank you. Monica? Public hearing with text amendment, city articles.
Yes, sir, I know y'all are tired of seeing my face tonight. I'm a ray of sunshine. Okay. Next up, you have a, okay, I'm gonna go back to that. Next up, you have a city text amendment. This specifically is to look at a new ordinance, and I'm gonna pull the ordinance out, and I'm also gonna rely a little bit on the city attorney. Molly said you were gonna make this presentation, not me. No, okay, that doesn't seem right to you, does it? Okay, so, in the past, we have had a policy about short-term rentals, and there is some movement afoot at the Georgia state level to give assurances that those can be done more frequently in local communities. And so there has already been an ordinance passed by Morgan County to specifically limit that in their jurisdiction. This is just the city echoing and trying to figure out what the standards are inside of our jurisdiction for these land uses. So the proposal for you this evening, and I need a copy. The proposal for you this evening is for a definition for short-term rentals to be added, as well as land uses specifically being added to the land use table in very specific zones. Those zones would be AR, which is our largest possible lot that we have, and that accommodates a little bit more activity. It also limits it to P1 and P2. P1 is our limited commercial zone. P2 is a mixed-use zone that surrounds the downtown area but is not in the historic residential area. There are a few residences in that area, but not many. This would allow for The use of property for short-term rental, it is fully defined. I'm not going to go over all of these because we've had lots of phone calls. It's been covered in the press, and the ordinance is available for anybody to read if they'd like to pick up a copy. I'm just going to hit the highlights if I can. So specifically, what we're looking to do is to say, yes, it is legal. Where is it going to be legal? So first, it's a district evaluation. So big lots, the biggest the better to hold that. The second is what kind of limitations would be placed on that. So we're looking at a distance requirement very similar to how we distance bed and breakfast, group homes, or any other type of commercial activity that's intruding into residential areas. So we're kind of looking at that extra lodging activity that's happening and making it at least be disparate and lower impact. So you'll see that there's distancing requirements on there. It also pays special attention to safety. Most of the comments that we received that were had to do with safety requirements and safety concerns, and so we have specifically some in there. And then it does require that either the primary dwelling or the accessory dwelling be owner-occupied. All of our other uses that allow something other than a single-family dwelling, I'm going to repeat this again, other than just a single-family dwelling, there has to be an owner-occupant on site. And so that carries over into this use for short-term rental. It does not require it to be in the primary residence the way a bed and breakfast establishment would. So it is different. It is considered residential, but you can live in your outbuilding and rent out your primary dwelling, and that's the big difference. They are required to remit hotel motel tax in accordance with state law, and then we looked at a lot of requirements that are different when you have a change out in occupancy more frequently than you do with a single family dwelling. And then if the discussion goes toward that, there has been some questions about violations and penalties and how that might be handled, and I'm going to leave that for the city attorney to discuss should that be of interest to the council. So I'm sure there's going to be a good bit of discussion, and then I'll come back and answer any questions. I didn't hit every item on there because it is a pretty extensive ordinance. But if you have specific questions, I stand ready to answer those after the public hearing.
Yes, as far as violations, there's certain requirements that were pulled from other jurisdictions by staff, and that's after comments that we heard from the public through council members and council members speaking to myself, John, and staff members. This is going to be a license, and so a license is a privilege, not a right. And so there's certain conditions that if they violate that, such as have too many people in the home at one given time, too many cars parking on the street at any given time, if they violate other city ordinances such as noise or trash ordinances so many times, it is up to the discretion of staff. The first issue a warning, and second that could go out, if it's multiple, in a short period of time, they could go out and either decide to suspend, penalize, or even revoke their license. And that decision is made, is it by you, Monica?
No, sir, it's the building and zoning administrator, that's
Okay.
the city manager.
City manager. And then if the property owner wanted to appeal that, it would come before you for an appeal, similar to how alcohol licenses used to work. And so there is a process to suspend licenses or take them away or fine them if they violate any of these regulations that Monica went over. And I'll be happy to answer any more questions that you all have.
I have a quick question I see here, if I could, Mr. Mayor. It's limited to 8 people in the daytime. Did I miss something? Is there any limitations on the number of, I know there's 4 bedrooms. Is that where the 8 came from?
Yeah, I believe so.
But it doesn't, there's no limitation on the number of people at night?
The 4 bedrooms would be that limitation.
But this kind of implies,
So might I suggest that we hold the public hearing so we can get a full
Yeah, I'm sorry,
retinue
yeah.
of
Yeah.
questions and comments?
by all means.
Okay. Our public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here to speak for this text amendment? Anyone here to speak against this text amendment? Yes, sir. If you would come up and state your name and where you live.
Excuse me, stiffened up. Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name's Greg Ash. I go by Mully. That's a nickname that I've had for 70 years. I've sat in your position. I'm from Helen, originally from Helen. I was mayor and on city commission there for 14 years. We have a lot of VRBO and Airbnb in our town, but that's our mentality up there. We're a resort town. I moved here a year and a half ago with my wife. We live in Veranda Park. And I moved here because y'all done an unbelievable job. What a community this is. I think if you start looking at going the downtown, for the rentals, I've seen it in Helen. I owned a home in Fripp Island. It's turned into pretty much all VRBO, but it was a resort. But we did have some problems with it at Cuscawilla where I sold my place there. Started renting underneath us and stuff like that, loud music and stuff. I would hope that the city council will really look at this real strong. You've got something here that is special, that nobody hardly in this state has, what y'all have here and what you've created here. If you do this, it's gonna have to be so strict, but be ready to get the phone calls. Be ready to have, because it's gonna happen. You've got, what, 2 policemen on at night, 2 or 3? They're gonna get phone calls for, people mad because of, music going. And I know a lot of the homes that, a lot of these people that, or if you've got, now I haven't seen your ordinance yet because I was hearing something about you had to live on the property. That's not the way that I've seen in other places where people rent their places out. They don't live there. They bought them to rent them out. They don't become part of the community. They're just this conglomerate or somebody buying the houses and wanting to do the nightly rentals. You have people that have been buying these homes, especially in the historical district, that have come here. They put, my younger brother, what's young, I'm 70, he's 65, so they ain't that young, is building a nice home over on Hill Street. And people that have bought over in this historical area, even though it's not my district that I think you're looking at, it could bleed over to those areas later. So I just wanted to let you know some of the things that we've had in my neighborhood up in Helen, Georgia. We have it's called Innsbrook Golf Course. 60% of the neighborhood now, 55% is nightly rentals. And you get so many people in there. I see a problem in this neighborhoods here. You're gonna have problems with parking. They'll say they're only gonna bring 2, but they'll bring 3 and 4. You got narrow streets over there. And my concern was, that it's gonna bleed over in other neighborhoods, but you do have such a nice community here. I wasn't born here, but I plan on probably having my funeral here. We love this town. And before I get off on anything else, you've got one employee in the city, that helped me the other day, Christina, in the water department, who handles that. God bless her. She saved me a lot of money because she called me. You don't get that in other communities. She called me and said, we think you've got something running at your house. I'm up in Helen, Georgia, because I still have my restaurant and stuff up there toward the end. But I got someone over there to check on it, and I'm a dummy, left some hose there running. So I just think that if y'all look at this, I think a lot of us need, I haven't known that there was gonna be an ordinance that's been drafted this is, I mean, we heard that they were gonna have a discussion, but nothing about the ordinance being drafted. I'd love to look at that, because I've been in your shoes, and I know how much, and I know down in Lake Oconee, Putnam County, I think Tuscaloosa tried to stop it because it was starting to be a problem. Putnam County's tried to limit it real bad because it was just a lot of people. And you're gonna have a crowd that's wanting to come through here, I guess, the Georgia football games and stuff like that, and wanting weekend rentals. And you have a tough time, as when your councilman said something about needing housing for workers and stuff. You start transforming a lot of these little places into Airbnbs, you ain't gonna have a place for a lot of your people to live in when they work here. So we love it here, me and my wife, and I just want to say, be careful with this, because it can open up a can of worms like you've never seen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Did you hold the time? I think I did a bad job on the presentation. I'm just going to add a couple of comments, if you'd let me, please, out of order.
Sure, go ahead.
First, what we're hearing out of legal is that with no action, we don't have a way to defend ourselves upon them originating wherever. So we do need an ordinance in place of some type to help provide guidance to those who might choose to explore those avenues. Anyone that we currently have that is operating, we are probably in a grandfathered state because they have already proceeded without asking. So just to be clear, this is the first draft of an ordinance that is written to be very narrow on purpose. And so I don't think that got communicated when the press covered it in the paper. This is not an attempt to open the door and invite a lot of this type of activity. It is an attempt to make sure that we're doing it in a legal fashion that is very limited.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Debbie Lamb. And yeah, thank you for clarifying that, Monica. That makes sense. However, owning property in another community, which is loaded with short-term rentals, Highlands. We also lived in Beaufort, South Carolina. Tons of, there are tourist destination places. And the only people who are happy in those communities with short-term rentals are the people who own the short-term rentals. My biggest wish is that you did not open the door, that you closed it completely. What they're finding in Highlands after multiple years of lawsuits, they have ordinances there too. What they're finding after multiple years of lawsuits is just like the conversations we had earlier about variances, and I go to your planning and zoning meetings where we have zoning ordinances that get pushed back and changed and altered. They're in place, but there's always special cases. So once you open the door to making a special circumstance or a special change or allowing this or allowing that, somebody else wants to crawl through that door. Highlands is about 25 to 30% short-term rentals. None of those people live in Highlands. It's property they own that they rent out. It's very profitable. There is not a person who lives next door to a short-term rental that's happy about it. I think I can say that 100%. So once you open up that door in Highlands to short-term, in Madison to short-term rentals, beautiful little town just like Highlands. People come here and they want to enjoy the restaurants, the historic district and everything else. But once you crack open that door, it's going to be pushed just a little bit wider and a little bit wider. If you do have to do something, I'd prefer you outlawed them completely. There's nobody who owns property in Madison and lives here full-time who wants a short-term rental next door. There just isn't. There's a reason why hotels are not in residential areas. There's no way to vet the clientele who comes to a hotel, vet them. Short-term rentals do not vet their occupants. They take them online, VRBO, Airbnb, or through a rental agency in town. They usually check in through a keypad, and most of them are great folks who just want to enjoy Madison. But then you have the problem with the ones who aren't. And what's the process once you get somebody in? You know, how many police do we have in town? So, you know, my hope is that you really look at this long and hard before you allow a little bit, because just like the variance differences, you're going to crack that door. There's going to be exceptions that need to be made for this circumstance or that circumstance. That's just the nature of the game. And you know, I hate to see what happened in Highlands and Cashiers. Great little tourist towns happen here in Madison. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So can I ask you a question, Jay? If there are bed and breakfasts here, the homeowner has to stay in that particular house? Can it be where the homeowner have to stay in that particular bed and breakfast, or?
Other than if it's just a single-family residence, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So if it's just a home, they do not have to stay there.
Okay.
Sorry. You were asking about B&Bs?
Right.
Straight up B&Bs, not
Yeah.
the Airbnb, so that's a difference, of course. Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Is there anyone else here to speak against?
I understand that having no ordinance allows people to do whatever they want to do. I understand you need to pass something. That said, I hope that it will be as strict as possible, because what you don't want to run into is properties being converted to rental properties just to serve that market. And because you can make a lot more money renting a house out for weekends or a week here, a week there, than you can on a, you know, annual basis. But you also run into problems with increased need for services, police, et cetera, and you pit neighbor against neighbor. I don't want to live next door to a short-term rental. I don't want different people coming in and out all the time. And, you know, my grandchildren are frequently there. I don't want to have to worry about who might be next door renting for the weekend. So I hope that you will draft something that is as tight as possible and as limited as possible, with a very, very limited number of permits granted each year, and require that the owner be on the property to help manage or mitigate those problems that you have. Because it is a recipe for disaster if it gets out of hand. And I agree with Debbie's comments that once that door is open, you've really got to put some door stops on it to keep it from being pushed further and further open. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else here to speak against?
You have something to say? Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Jay, did you have something you wanted to
I was
say?
going to wait till we got back to
Okay.
our comments.
Ms. Bell?
It'll be short. It's all on this little yellow sticky. I know I keep hearing, and I'm not saying it's untrue by any stretch, but I keep hearing talk about the state is pushing. Can you not understand?
Yeah, we can't hear you
Okay.
there. Thank you.
I'm not saying it's untrue, I just can't find it. I keep hearing discussion that the state is pushing to make sure people can do this in local communities as an extension, I suppose, to the push on property rights. But I can't find it. I mean, I looked in 2017-18, House Bill 579 to amend Title 36, you know, local government, home rule, came forward to say that the local governments, was put forward to say that local governments can't ban short-term rentals. It died. I don't find any, I can't ask you, I'm sorry, not my place, but I can't, I mean, maybe there's something else pending now I couldn't find, but there are cities in Georgia that just ban them. And so I would just like, before anything gets adopted, to explore maybe that, that line as well. Do we have to? I don't know that there's anything in Georgia that makes us. That's all, just a question, really. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there anyone else here to speak against? Yes, sir.
My name is Turner Kurzweg. Now, I'd just like to add one thing to what both Debbie and Molly alluded to, but I don't know that brought it up specifically. When you have a short-term rental homeowner, I don't believe those are the type of people that'll support the community with the cultural center, the activities that make this community one that Molly wants to move from Helen or Debbie wants to move from Atlanta here. Those sort of the community affairs that draw people to this community, that make it special. A short-term owner is not going to support that because the people that come here for the weekend aren't going to have tickets to a cultural center event or whatever. I think that you'll find that those owners are only in it for the profit and they'll be absentee owners, and I don't think that's the type of people that you want to attract to this community. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak against?
Mr. Mayor, I want to correct something. I want to speak for and not against. I mean, you moved kind of fast a minute ago when we was trying to talk about it, if it's all right.
Let me ask the attorney.
I think we closed the fourth section.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Not a problem.
Anyone else here to speak against? If not, the public hearing is, Ms. Winslow.
I'll try to be fast. I'm Carol Winslow. I'm speaking in opposition. I just would encourage y'all to be super careful with how you do this if you're going to do it. I was researching nearby places, Eatonton as well as Athens, and they're both having to change what they're doing because of the problems that the community is experiencing. Lengthy meetings like this with people coming to speak against things, but now that they have had them for so long, the owners have made financial investments and they feel like they can't have that taken away, and they hire lawyers. So I know in Athens they're trying to figure out what is a way to sunset, I think it is, I don't think it's sundowning, sunset those things where they're not going to be able to do it anymore, and they're talking, well, they'll be able to do it another 2 years or another 5 years, working it out with the lawyers, and that just gets so messy. So, if you could really be specific about the violations so that it's already in front of everyone, have the code officers already picked out, have all the procedures for everything set up before you even start it, that would probably be better because they seem to be a big problem. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else here to speak against? If not, this public hearing is closed. It's back to our council for debate. Do you have anything final you would like to say?
Yes, I was just going to address Eric's question earlier.
If I could interject just
Yeah.
for 1 second. Is it not possible to, with 15 minutes left on the pro, could we not make an exception and let Tim speak? There's still 1.5 minutes left to rebut on the no if he wants to. Can we make an exception for him?
I'm fine with that. It's just our attorney.
If y'all want to, you're more than happy to.
Is the council okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, Tim?
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Good evening,
Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Council. I want to say a couple of things about the text amendment. I had an opportunity last a couple weeks ago to go to a housing conference. And that was one of the things they discussed about short-term rentals there. It's getting to be popular, and it's getting to be very great for different areas. I heard a comment a minute ago, a lot of people won't participate, like the Culture Center. We don't know when they come to visit or stay here for a little while, we don't know what their intentions are, but we know they're in our city. Especially, I had the opportunity to meet with ones from LJ. They are doing the same thing right now about short-term rentals. It was great. If y'all do it, it would be great for the city of Madison. Also, I heard the rules and regulations and guidelines. I had the opportunity, I think that Friday, I had to met with the city manager of Perry, Georgia. And they got some strict rules and regulations about their short-term rentals. One of their programs, they call it Nasty Nine. And I have all the literature here, city manager. I brought it back for Philip. And we're supposed to meet Friday to discuss that. They got some serious things in their Nasty Nine program, they ordinance, that for their short-term rentals in Perry, Georgia as well. So they don't take that lightly, like you said earlier about the noise pollution, too many people in a resident and trash is everywhere. No, sir. That is one of their pet peeves in their city. They really strict. Like you said, the first time a warning, second time you get a citation, third time you be in front of the judge. That's the city manager's orders there. Because he said, because you're not going to destroy their city. They want their city to be beautiful and maintained. Well, as I think if we do allow that to happen in Madison, we want our city to stay beautiful and maintained where people come back and visit as well. And also, as a few other cities have been here that I found out at our GET conference, that a lot of cities have come to Madison and took our ideas that we have in Madison and put it in their cities now. And I thought that was great for them to take our ideas, what we done started here in the city of Madison, and transfer them somewhere else. But if y'all do, we have to work on these serious stipulations, the ordinance and the guideline, and be serious about it, because if we let it get away from us, that's where the problem come in. But I always know if you cut the snake head off before we get started, then we won't have a problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, well, you're gonna ask a question, Eric?
I think I asked it, but I think I found my answer, but go ahead, Jay, please.
It's right above where you are citing to, and
Yeah.
it limits it to 2 people per bedroom.
In the
And-
1A,
Yes,
IA, right, I guess?
yes.
Okay. I did have a question, Jay, if I could. The term owner occupied, yeah, is that the legal, I mean, it can be, does that require that the owner, the legal owner of that property be there at any time as rented, or just?
So there's really 2 things, and correct me if I'm wrong, Monica, but if it is just a single house structure, the owner does not have to be there. If it is a principal and accessory, they do have to be there. Is that kind of correct?
So if the owner wasn't there, then it would be that HA, he would need to, he would need to identify the contact person, is that the?
The local contact person, yes.
I need to look for that, Eric, because we went back and forth on that. We've got one that's already grandfathered, and we see that the historic district's gonna start getting pressured for more of them. So we looked at that very specifically because a lot of them have both a primary and a secondary unit on them. The owner has to respond within 60 minutes of any complaint that we give them. I'm looking to see if it says it has to be present on property if they're renting the primary. We pulled 18 ordinances, so I'm trying to figure out which one that was pulled from.
I just want to see your hard copy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Why'd you turn me on?
And I apologize, Molly knows this like the back of her hand, but I have to admit, I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
Will only be valid as long as either the principal or the accessory dwelling unit is owner occupied and lived in by the owner. One of them has to be occupied by the owner, is what I see, Jay.
On
Yes,
the- on
that's,
the
that's
actual-
800.10B. This ordinance is written very similar to, and y'all don't take this and run with it, just, I'm giving it as a reference. This ordinance is written very similarly to the adult entertainment ordinance. There weren't a lot of people in our community that were very excited or welcoming of adult entertainment either, but the attorney assured us of the potential loss of the lawsuit if we did not prescribe some locations thereof. Same with group homes. We wrote both of those ordinances in a very similar fashion. And we already have evidence that that's happened once. So just be aware that you do need to proceed with something, even if you find something here concerning and you'd like to edit it or come back and edit it in the future. That's my recommendation, and legal may have another comment on that. And since this is not a variance, I am actually recommending as opposed to variances, which I don't.
If I may I?
Sure.
So, I love all this in blue, but this was not on in my agenda. So where, I mean, when I uploaded,
My understanding is the blue was what was presented previously, and then the red, no, the red was what was presented
Yeah,
previously,
the
and the blue was what was drafted by Molly and the attorney in response to the requirement of limitations, annual licensing, strict licensing, revocation of licenses, fines, fees. Anything I
Yes.
miss?
Nope.
So the city attorney distributed that to you tonight. And it wouldn't surprise me if you do want to table it and smoke that a little bit.
it's right there. Yeah. Oh, so, so then, let me just ask, so if we just got which is lovely and it's well fleshed out, don't get me wrong, it's great, but
Staff's not pushing you to do it tonight.
that's not what I'm
Okay.
saying. What I'm saying is this, though, I guess I'm feeling like, if we, as council, just got the full fleshed out bit now, I'm guessing that the attendees here who are here and speaking have not seen the full fleshed out.
That's correct.
That is correct.
So that they are unaware of what we're looking at, but it is fully fleshed out. It does deal with safety. It does deal with owner occupation, and you clarified on the owner occupation that whether it's the a single family unit or a accessory building, the owner must be
Present, on
present.
site.
On site, period. And then we have,
And
no.
so
If it's
owner occupation
If it's
is,
single family, does he have to be, yes, or, I mean, does the owner have to be there, single family? It's just, I just asked.
it says will be valid as long as either the principal or accessory dwelling unit is owner occupied and lived in by the owner described by section 210. If you'll remember, section 210 was done when we had an inn doing operations and they had gotten a divorce and they weren't living in the property anymore, and there's this big debate what owner occupied meant. And Lambert, Reitman, and Abney wrote us a 8-page codicil over what owner occupied meant. So it does not say that they will be present every second. What it says is that it will be owner occupied by definition under the law.
Yeah,
I see, okay.
And you might need to revisit section 200 owner occupied to see if that stringency still meets your requirement. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Well, good for me.
Yes. Now, but we're not, excuse me, one thing. So it has to be owner occupied, I get that. but it doesn't mean that, as you're saying.
It doesn't mean the owner is
there.
continuously present.
Now, but we're not, does it have to be, when we say owner occupied, do we imply that it's the primary residence, or?
We do not. They can occupy either building on the property.
Okay.
Because a rental unit is a rental unit is a rental unit on the property, whether it's in the main house or whether it's in an outbuilding. You still have the same potential for parties, overflowing cars, all the negative ills that you've heard articulated tonight would exist whether it was in a primary or an accessory.
Thank you. Also, if I may ask, so you did reference, I believe, I was a little confused at the minute, about current operating short-term rentals. Did you?
We do have some that have proceeded
Right.
apace, because we do not have an ordinance in place like the county does.
That's right. And are they owner occupied?
They are not. I do
don't
not
believe
believe
so.
so.
Okay.
Neither
So
are we.
How will this
That's
apply
right.
to
So
them?
they are not owner, so basically, we have two short-term rentals operating now, at least I'm aware of two, that are not, do not conform to.
Planning staff is only aware of one.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And
sorry.
there may be two, I'm not contesting that, but we've only been apprised of one.
Oh, okay.
Jay, do you know if there's another?
I've heard 1 and 2, but
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
So how will this apply to the ones that are already operating now?
it won't. They're grandfathered in.
Will they have to have a license,
No,
ever?
no. As long as they continuously rent it out.
And that applies to anybody. And I would be helpful just a little bit to Ms. Bell's comment. I served on the Housing Legislative Committee that GMA pulled together. There was a group of about 20 of us, and they were advising us on changes to housing policy, threats to single family. They specifically did note that there was a bill being pushed through. It was not successful. Ms. Bell did accurately report that. We were told to expect it to continue to push through again next year. We believe that the city does need to proactively prepare, and this is our first attempt. If you want to chew on it, I will say that the reason you received a handout from the city attorney tonight is because we were asked to be responsive to the licensing and the forfeiture of licensing and penalty section. It wasn't strong enough. We do have a full-time code enforcement officer. This would be on their list of things that they do.
So Monica, if no decision is made tonight, what happens?
You table it to a date certain and you take it up at your next meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
and probably to Jay, but if no decision is made tonight, are we in danger of others starting and operating until we meet back in a month, and then they too enjoy the
That will be a risk.
perpetual and then could we put a moratorium if we don't do anything tonight?
Can't we extend that? Yes.
There's
Good
not,
question.
there's not a moratorium in place. It's hard to put a moratorium in place on something you don't currently regulate, though.
Okay.
Wow.
With that being said, Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'll just add some of my thoughts and insight. And we've spoken about this several times in the past. I share a lot of the concerns, except for Tim's, that I think that the downside of this is a lot bigger than the potential upside of it. And I'll tell on myself. My son got married last weekend in St. Simons, and we rented a house. And it very clearly stated no more than 4 cars. I think I counted 9. It said the noise ordinance was 10 p.m. Most of the people in that home were up way past that, most of whom are related to me, and I'm sorry, but we weren't good neighbors. I mean, but we were having fun. And I just see where that can happen. And but that being said, I hear at least 2 attorneys I know spoke, and then we've got Jay, who's our attorney. I don't know how to assess. Just me personally, if we did away with it where we did not allow it, that would suit my personal needs. I can't speak to the other 4 council members, but I don't know if that would put us in harm's way. And to what Monica spoke about in regards to the adult entertainment establishments and that kind of thing. So would look for a little clarity from our attorney, I guess.
My comment is if you want to ban it, planning staff is fully supportive of
I
that,
understand.
provided that the city attorney will defend
Correct.
that.
Correct.
The city attorney is going to defend whatever y'all do. That's not a problem. But, if council is leaning towards tabling it to a date certain, I mean, this would be another decision for you all, but you do not have to wait a full month. You could do it at your work session or another specially called meeting to cut that time down.
Because I will say, it's a little concerning that we just received a lot of great detail, but the public has not received that either, and we just kind of got this tonight. But I think, just to kind of, you know, I sit here and I'm not feeling comfortable, because I have an opinion, and I see a lot of my constituents out there who I respect and who I'm supposed to represent, who seem to have a little different opinion. So it's that very frequent situation where, do I do what I think is best for my constituents, or do I listen more to what they want, thinking they may not be right? It's kind of a quandary, to be honest with you, to be totally frank. At any rate, I want to assure you that what is in this particular ordinance is really limited. If I could ask, Ken, can you put up the planning map? I think it's important to know that what... The zoning map, I'm sorry, yeah, the zoning map, to really see where P2 is. Don't forget, there's a 1,000-foot separation between anyone that's going to be doing this. The P2 zone is about 2,000 feet wide, approximately. Well, you do the math. If you got to be 1,000 feet away from another established short-term rental, that doesn't leave too many short-term rentals. I mean, it's really limited. And I think a lot of the protections are here in this detail, which unfortunately we haven't had a chance to really look at. Let me just say, there's a lot of people that want to travel using short-term rentals. I'm convinced there is a way to do it, to control it, to limit the negative impacts on neighbors. This might be it, but I'm a little concerned that we haven't had a chance to really delve into this. Okay, if you go up to the lost it. P2 encompasses very little of all of P2 is in the historic district, if I'm not mistaken, or close to it.
P2 is the donut around downtown.
Yeah, it's the dark blue
And it
you
is
see
the
there.
buffer to the single-family area.
So it's P2, so that's the downtown, where you see the dark blue, not the hash mark, those are PRDs pretty much, but it's the dark blue area, you can kind of see on the map. It's very limited. If you put one in the middle of that north of the park side where the cursor is, and you put one house in the middle of that district and you go 1,000 feet, there's no more room for any other houses on that side. It's really much more limited than I think a lot of people have fears of. Now, there is a question, a lot of people thinking it's kind of opening the door. Maybe it does, but maybe it also protects us from doing nothing, and as Rick mentioned, maybe getting more grandfathered, having more residents go this route without our controls. Anyway, the other districts, the P1 is way out of town practically. The agricultural is way down by the zoo. No one's going to want to, yeah, that dark brown there. That's the agricultural residential zone down there. So there's a lot of limitations built into this. The fact that it's owner occupied addresses some of the last gentleman's comments. I think that this guy will be, the owner, he's going to have to talk to his next door neighbor about the problems that went on last weekend, and I think that will limit some of the issues. But anyway, I wish we had given this to you earlier. I wish we had gotten it earlier as well.
So, just so you know, we walk through any ordinance's applicability. So just like with the other ordinance I referenced, we're pretty sure that there's only 1 or 2 sites in an industrial area that it's possible to exercise that ordinance. Planning staff is pretty comfortable that there are only 3 potential locations at any time. that could fall under the current ordinance as drafted. We're not allowed to limit competition, so we don't get to say there can only be 3 liquor stores. We're only going to issue 3 bed and breakfast licenses. We're only going to issue 3. We don't get to restrain it that way. So what we do look at is density requirements, and what that does is when one goes down, that pretty much draws a bubble and tells us how many others we could have. Molly informed me she thinks we can have 2, maybe 3. So we've written it as restrictive as we could. And again, I apologize for the last minute restrictions, but those came from legal at the request of a council person after the Planning Commission meeting. So we were trying to be responsive to requests from y'all, and you got it as soon as we had it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Mayor. I've just sat here and listened, and this is a difficult topic to me. It really is. And I do know that there's some people out there that live in their house and would love to be able to do what Eric talks about. And they're pretty good people. On the other hand, I've always been against them. And on the other hand, I feel we got to do something in order to ensure, yes, it's going to go back through again. It's just going to be just like the horse racing. It's going to be all that kind of stuff. They'll keep pushing it through. Eventually, something will happen. So my question for Lee would be, if we just banned it completely, would we have the option when that goes through to come back and make a simplified project just like we're talking about right now?
You can always amend your ordinance.
So if we just said no for right now to ensure that nobody else comes in here and just goes ahead and does it, that's my biggest concern, because we have no control over it. And it's going to happen. And Rick, that house behind you that looks down 30 feet on yours, somebody's going to, you know, that can happen. So I just really feel that we'd be better off, Mr. Mayor, if we just had a motion to ban it. That gives us time to go back and go through all this, Eric, and look at it and be prepared. And we can always amend it, like you said, if we come back and we bring better information to the people out here and out there. We can make a good decision. And not making a decision tonight, to me, is too risky. I just feel, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we ban.
If
Right.
I have a,
Yeah, you go first.
okay. If that is going to be your motion, Council Member Latham, my legal suggestion would be to adopt at least the short-term rental
Policy.
the definition of short-term rental, and then prohibit it in all of the uses, including AR, P1, and P2.
Yes, so that's where I was at.
Thank you.
I'm gonna give you some things to scribble down if you want to go there.
Yeah.
So you would, so you can always approve, deny, or approve with modifications. So whoever is inclined so to make a motion should make a motion to approve the ordinance, not as presented, but with the following modifications: to only include the definitions set forth in section 210, and to make it, and we can be a little broader, you can say to make it a prohibited use in all land use tables for all zoning districts.
Eric,
You can make it a prohibited use in all land use tables for all zoning districts. And the two that are in your submittal that went to the Planning Commission were 610.3 and 620.3 are the sections. That'll do it. That's what I checked on my list. You got anything else?
Sounds great to me.
thanks, Monica.
Yes, sir.
So it's like council feel good about that? And I was just gonna make one comment. I think someone said, we do have hotels in our cities. I think there's a new hotel that's being built as we speak. So how much business do we want to take away from our hotels by allowing this to happen in our cities? You know, none of us had an answer, but I think we all want everybody to survive. But I think Councilmember Rick made a good point. He was honest about what he said, that he was at St. Simon's Island this week, and of course, he was a good man, but they acted up, you know, so. and nobody knows who's gonna move, who's gonna rent those, none of us know who's gonna rent those bed and breakfasts, you know. And some will come and they will do the right thing, because I do believe some will rent a bed and breakfast to go to the cultural center or to go to other functions here in our city, you know. But at the end of the day, it's the citizens in this community and this city that's responsible for Madison and the well-being of our citizens. So I think, Monica, you did say that we don't have to adopt this, we could ban this, and Jay said we need to do it, and I just want to be.
I said you could act on the ordinance, but you can act to approve, deny, or modify. And I gave you the sections that you would need to modify to make it a full prohibition until such time as you consider something else.
All right. And if we deny it, it comes back up later, we'll still be in the same boat.
Right.
Still trying to figure out what are we gonna do, you know, so.
But we will have already done all the homework.
Well, I'd like to make a motion.
Sure, go ahead.
I move that we approve the text amendment with the following modifications.
Okay.
That we include the definition for short-term rental in section 210. We prohibit use in all land use tables in zoning districts per 610.3 and 620.3.
And Councilmember Wagenhauser, did you mean to include both definitions? Because the
I did.
second definition includes specifically that that's not considered residential per se.
Okay,
The two definitions there that are on the list, do you mean to include both of those?
do I mean to?
Yes.
I do mean to, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I do. Thank you for asking.
Second.
Okay. Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let the record show 4 and 1 against. That's Councilmember Joyce. Motion approved. Thank you so much. Are there any unfinished business that we need to handle tonight?
Yes, there is.
Sure. Hold on just a moment.
One item under
New business. We have a ballot for the election of GMA District 5 officers for 2024-2025, and we know Councilmember Joyce will become our president for District 5. First Vice President will be Kurt Ward, Mayor of Brazelton. Second Vice President will be Amanda Willis of Councilmember Carlton. And then third Vice President would be John Howard, Mayor of Monroe. So we can get a motion to approve these District 5 officers, and our city clerk can let GMA know on tomorrow.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimous. Thank you so much. Now we need a volunteer to carry our flag.
There's only one person that can do that.
But GMA needs to know, so we'll know who's going to carry the flag. So our
Sounds like
city
Eric.
clerk can let them know on tomorrow.
Sounds like Eric. Five, I agree.
All right, it has been said that our president of District 5, Councilmember Eric Joyce, will carry the flag. Hooray for Councilmember Joyce. He loves to do that.
This seems to be a duty that I just cannot shirk.
That's because you got long legs and run fast.
We can see our flag really well.
Now, did I omit anything else, Madam Clerk, about that we need to take care of before we have public comments? Everything is good. I would like to, one like it was one other thing that we was going, oh, the appointment of our city attorney.
We recommend the appointment of our city attorney. I'll write up the notes.
So you don't want to do it tonight?
Yeah.
Okay, recommend our city attorney for another year.
Should he leave the room?
No, he's good.
We
So we don't have to-
told him all the bad stuff.
So,
Okay.
is there all the council members in favor of that?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
indeed.
Opposed is none, so,
Thank you,
Mr.
Jay.
J, we'll see you
Thank
the
you,
rest
Jay.
of this year, and next year.
Thank you, guys.
so much
Congratulations.
Jay.
for what you do for us.
Executive session.
Yeah, hold on, I got it. Before we go into executive session, I know we usually have comments, and I was just trying to find something for a moment here. Right here. No,
Yeah, but
I
he's
got
looking for
that.
his language.
I can find my language.
Yeah, you had it. Maybe I said on it.
Hold on. It's there.
It's
It
here
was there
somewhere.
just a second ago.
Was that the email from John?
Okay. Before I comment, I'd just like to make a statement tonight, because we have now reached the part of our agenda for public comments. Public comments allows any interested citizen up to 5 minutes of unfettered and uninterrupted access to make a statement on an issue of importance to you. This is your time to make a statement, and we will not interrupt you, nor will we entertain questions and answers. If a response is required, the appropriate council member or staff will follow up with you after the meeting. And the only rule that we have is one requiring civility, and we ask that you not attack or make personal comments against anyone or against staff or any council member. And at this time, if there are comments from the floor, feel free to come at this time.
Do I need to sign this again? No.
You've already been up, we already know who you are. Yeah.
It's Carol Winslow again. And I was going to ask a question, but I wasn't thinking I would get an answer, so just go ahead and dive in. I was looking at, I have new glasses, so it's a little tiny. The Muni Code Library, the ordinance for historic preservation, section 42-5, and it says designated historic properties and historic districts shall constitute the historic preservation overlay zone within the context of the city's zoning ordinance and the specific provisions, regulations, and guidelines adopted pursuant to this chapter shall be considered more restrictive and govern the established overlay zone. So guidelines is the key word there. Also, that they are considered more restrictive and govern. So if you look up the guidelines, which are the design criteria, in my understanding, which is limited, there is a spot, well, there's many spots where it talks about the side yard for corner lots for different things like materials. They are looked at for different things, different ways, very meticulously, in my opinion. But there is a footnote too, but it's with new construction, so I'm not sure if that applies to an addition or not. Within the historic preservation overlay zone, the standard zoning setbacks are overridden by historic precedent, which is more specific and less arbitrary for a particular location. And then it says for side street locations, corner property side yards will be taken into consideration. So my comment is that I've sat through a lot of the HPC meetings, and I do find them to be very meticulous, and I think that they look at more than the zoning setback thing does. But just wanted to make that comment, and I was hoping to ask if that was accurate, because I'm not an attorney, but I won't ask. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes.
I want to take just a second to say, to commend a city employee. I had the opportunity to attend the Boys and Girls Club Motown at the municipal function a week or so ago, and Officer Travis Stubbs from the Madison City Police Department was there working security. And at the end of the event, when the volunteers, we were putting tables and chairs back in the hangar, it started raining. And Travis didn't hesitate. He jumped right in there and was bringing chairs in and folding them up and helping us out, even though that wasn't part of his job. And I just wanted to commend him to you for being just a great person and just so helpful and so polite in so many ways.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That will be passed on. Thank you so much. Any more public comments? If not, we need a motion to go into executive session to discuss real estate.
And potential litigation.
And potential litigation.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, is none. We'll go into executive session. I'm sure the councilman need to take a quick break.